Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are new here, my name is Maria. Welcome to A Journey of Faith with Maria T. So if you haven't already, then please do subscribe to my channel and also just click on that notification bell so that you can be notified every single time that I drop a new video. So guys, in today's video, I'm going to be speaking about us reconnecting to God. So just sharing a few tips and hoping that it will definitely speak to someone and help someone who may be at that point where they feel like they are disconnected from God. Now guys, the reality is that we all face moments on our journey of faith, on our walk with God, where we feel disconnected. But like they say guys, when we feel like we're far away from God, guess who moves? Now the fact is that we will all kind of get to that place. Like, I'm not trying to be negative or whatever, but we all just have those moments. We face those times where we just realize that we are not connected. Like, we just know that there is something missing. We just know that it just doesn't feel like God is near. And this is not those seasons whereby you know that you are connected, but maybe you're just not hearing God because maybe you're in a season of maybe being tested. But this is really when you're in that season where you just know that, okay, I've kind of strayed away and I need to get reconnected again. If you've been following me on this channel, you would have seen that I have done a video before on staying connected to God, but this video is kind of more focused on us reconnecting during those periods where we have become disconnected. So I'll be sharing some of those tips and I hope that they help you. Feel free to also share some tips below as well in terms of any ways that you maybe reconnect to God. So for me, I kind of found myself in a period whereby I just kind of felt like, okay, do you know what, Lord, I just feel like I've not really been connected to you. And I was doing all of the usual things that you do, you know, but I just didn't really feel like I was connected. And I kind of just got to a point where I just felt like, God, like, I need to reconnect. Like, I know that I need to reconnect. So the first thing that I would say when it comes to obviously reconnecting with God is taking that time to kind of just sit down and reflect and just be like, God, like, what actually got me to this place of being disconnected? Because sometimes it can actually be something that maybe have come in a way. So it might have been a distraction, for example. It might have even been sin. It might have been an idol. That's something that just kind of took you away from that connection with God. And you kind of identifying that will kind of determine the first step that you will need to kind of take to kind of get that reconnection, if that makes sense. But the kind of sad thing that we tend to do as Christians is that obviously when we get to that point of being disconnected, the first thing we kind of tend to think or to do is, instead of kind of like running to God, we tend to run away from God because we kind of feel like, obviously, like, I'm not connected, so, you know, how can I even pray? But in those times, that's like the time where we actually need to pray even more and just be like, God, like, help me to reconnect. So number one is actually kind of identifying, like, okay, what was the reason why I became disconnected? And once we're able to kind of reflect on that, then we're able to kind of decide, okay, cool, this is what I need to kind of do. This is kind of like what I need to pray about. This is where I need to focus on my prayers. Point one is reflect, and point two is more kind of taking that action. So for example, you might feel like, okay, you know, you've been distracted lately. You know that you've kind of been turning away because there's other things that have been taking your attention, other things that have been taking your focus, and you know that, okay, that's the reason why. Like, maybe it's social media, maybe it's friends, like whatever it may be. Like, sometimes we need to take that time to disconnect from certain things, and sometimes that disconnection may be temporary, and sometimes that disconnection may have to be permanent. And we kind of just realize that, do you know what? This thing that I'm connected to is not allowing me to be fully connected to God. This thing that I'm connected to is kind of distracting me from being connected to God. And like I said, sometimes for a season, we need to disconnect from that thing. So for me personally, recently that was kind of social media. I just kind of felt like, you know, I need a social media break, okay? Like, social media is all good and well and all of that, but I just need a second away from this place because I need to reconnect with God. And kind of like still being connected with that is acting as a distraction because the time that I know that I should be spending with God, I'm really spending it on social media. So that was me, but it might not be the case for you, but you know what that thing is. You know what that thing is that you might need to disconnect from. So just taken that inventory and just seeing that, okay, I need to disconnect from this thing temporarily, or I need to disconnect from this thing for a longer period of time. Obviously, if it's something that is just like outright wrong, then that one is a permanent disconnection. Do you know what I mean? Then the number three thing as well, one thing that I noticed as well, especially because now we're in lockdown, feels like we've been in lockdown forever, guys, honestly. But yeah, because we've been in lockdown, I feel like obviously we've been indoor most of the time. We've not really been able to get outside. And one thing that I kind of found was that kind of going outside and just kind of reconnecting through nature is something that is very powerful. And sometimes we kind of underestimate the power of the things that God has actually created. Like, he has created these things for a purpose. And sometimes just being outside and connecting with those things that God has created. I think that now that the weather's kind of getting a bit better in the UK, that's definitely another opportunity to kind of just get outside, take some time outside as well, to just get some fresh air and just kind of spend some time with God outside as well. Whether it be like just going on walks, whether it might be going for a run, whether it might just be going outside during your break, I don't know, from whatever you do on a day-to-day basis, and just kind of just spending that time outside, spending that time with God as well. Sometimes a change of an environment is actually really good. And sometimes I guess because we've obviously been in lockdown for so long, it can be so comfortable being indoors. Like, trust me, I know how it is. But just taking that time every now and again to go outside to reconnect as well can help. So the number 4 thing, which can kind of be connected to number 3, is obviously spending time with God. So like I said before, a lot of the time, obviously, when we're disconnected, we kind of want to run away from God, not because we necessarily want to, but it's because it's kind of harder to come back to God, especially if we've been away for a long time and we feel like, oh God, like, can I even come to you at this moment? But yes, you can. Like, no matter how far away we've gone, the beautiful thing about a relationship with God is that we can always come back. And I'm always reminded of the parable of the prodigal son, because in that parable there were 2 sons, and one son had gone away for a very long time, but even when he came back, the father accepted him back with open arms. But one thing that we don't talk about often, guys, is that there was another son that was always in his father's presence. But when I read that parable, I honestly feel like he wasn't even connected as well. Like, he needed to reconnect to his father also. So you might maybe have been in church, or you might have maybe been in the presence of God, but you still kind of feel like you haven't really had that connection or that intimacy. So sometimes it's kind of like reading through that parable and just kind of seeing where you kind of stand in terms of those brothers, and then just kind of like realizing that there's always an opportunity to reconnect. Another thing with that as well is obviously, like, I can tell you guys all of these different things that you should do, but I feel like when it comes to a relationship is obviously unique to each individual, and there's obviously the standard things, I guess, like prayer, there's reading your word and, you know, doing all of that. But I think as well, what's important kind of amongst those things is also finding what works for you, doing things that you enjoy doing, things that you love doing, but then kind of doing it with God. So for example, I like to go for a run. So when I go for a run, that could be time with God, or going for a walk, that could be time with God. Some people it might be art, some people it might be writing, it might even be singing, like whatever it might be, you can do that with God, and that's also a way to reconnect. Another thing as well for me, so I love worship, and that's kind of like a way for me as well, that it's like, you know, if I'm feeling a bit somehow, I know I can just turn on worship music and yeah, just kind of like connect that way. So sometimes as well is realizing that you need to prepare for those seasons where you feel disconnected. Like, don't just wait for those seasons to come and then you're like, oh, I need to act. No, you need to be ready for those seasons. You need to already have prepared that, okay, do you know what, I've got a worship playlist, so when I have those seasons where I feel like I'm disconnected, I can just go to that worship playlist and then start to reconnect bit by bit. Also be patient as well. I think it's important to be patient, because sometimes when we've become disconnected for a long time, we feel like, okay, I need to just become reconnected again in one day, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes it takes a bit of time. So being patient with yourself and being patient with God the same way he's been patient with you when you were disconnected is also very important. I also feel like as well, just going back to my point when I said that it's important for us to kind of like be more prepared before those seasons of being disconnected. That might be writing down things as well, like maybe encouraging Bible scriptures where when those seasons come, you can just kind of like go to those scriptures and just pick them out and then kind of just start going through them, reading them, meditating on them in that time. That's actually like, I don't know, I just thought of that now, guys. But yeah, like actually just writing down scriptures that will encourage you during those times when you feel like, okay, I'm disconnected and I need to reconnect again. So scriptures that are specifically focused on that, I think that's also very important. And then the 5th and final thing, guys, is to reconnect with other believers as well, because sometimes we don't actually appreciate the power of kind of like numbers, and sometimes we think that, okay, cool, like I'm kind of disconnected to God, so let me just stay away from people. And sometimes we isolate ourselves, and sometimes, like not even sometimes, when we isolate ourselves, that's very dangerous. Like, I'm not saying when God isolates us, because sometimes obviously God isolates us, but when we ourselves now come and isolate ourselves, that is so dangerous, and sometimes it could even be more worse off than the disconnection that had taken place. So kind of like when you're going through that process of reconnecting to God, also realizing that, okay, I need to stay connected to other believers as well. I need to also reconnect with other believers if I have become disconnected with them, because that will also help me in reconnecting to God. So those are just 5 things, 5 tips I just wanted to quickly jump on here and share today for anyone who may be at that place where they feel that they are disconnected with God, or they feel like, do you know what, like I just feel like I've been far away from God. Like I said before, just remember that if you feel far away, guess who moved? Like God is always there, and he's waiting for you to come back to him. And I'll just leave you guys with one scripture as well that just kind of came to mind now, which is James, and I'll put the scripture reference on the screen, but it talks about how draw nigh to God and he will draw nigh to you. So I hope that encourages someone. And yeah, just don't feel like, oh, it's the end of the world if you become disconnected, or don't feel like, oh my gosh, that's it, like, oh my gosh, I'm rubbish Christian. No, like every single person who is a Christian can get to that point where they become disconnected, whether they're the most holy Christian or whether they're whatever. We can all get to that point. So don't beat yourself up too hard, and just remember that God sees your heart and he knows where you are right now. And yeah, reconnect. So that's all for today's video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, then make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you also share it with someone else, because it might also help them too. And also make sure you comment in the comment sections which one of the points that I spoke to related to you the most, and drop any points that you have also. I will catch you guys in my next video. Until next time, stay blessed and peace out.